Good evening, you're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Joanna Ho. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Top officials check out hygiene black spots days after announcing a citywide cleanup campaign. Former security chief Ambrose Lee passes away at age 73. And the man who attacked British-American novelist Salman Rushdie denies a charge of attempted murder. Top officials have vowed to get tough on litterbugs as a months-long campaign to clean up the city's streets got underway. Led by Deputy Chief Secretary Chuk Wing-hing, various government departments were out in force today to eradicate so-called hygiene black spots, Isaac Lee reports.
Littered with construction waste, parts of Cheongshan Street near an industrial area in To Kwa Wan resembled a landfill. It was one of 600 hygiene black spots the government has vowed to eradicate over the coming months. To show that it meant business, Deputy Chief Secretary Chuk Wing-hing and Home Affairs Chief Alice Mack even paid a site visit this morning. They were briefed by district officials on the long-standing issue. Chuk and his entourage also went to this back street in Mongkok and identified a number of typical hygiene problems, including water seepage and improper disposal of wastes. They even found 5 abandoned motorcycles. The officials rejected claims that the citywide clean-up program is merely a publicity stunt, saying it will last for at least 3 months. Chuk also stressed the importance of civic cooperation, urging citizens to do their parts to keep the city clean and warned of stiffer penalties for littering.
We will carry out extensive cleansing operation in all the black spots, including back lanes. And we will be doing that continuously. Currently, we have around 600 black spots. That number may grow in response to community feedback about other hygiene black spots.
He later joined Development Secretary Bernadette Lin in Sham Shui Po to identify potentially dangerous signages around the Apliu Street flea markets. Meanwhile, Environment Minister Che Chin-wen and the Director of Food and Environmental Hygiene Irene Yang inspected rodent control measures in Yuen Long Town Centre. As their visit drew to a close, a man crashed the party by telling the officials to crack down on illegal food stores. Che did not respond. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
Former security chief Ambrose Lee has died this morning at the age of 73. It is believed that Lee passed away in his sleep at his Sha Tin home. His son said he does not know the cause of death yet. Executive Council convener Regina Yip, who worked extensively with Lee during her tenure as Director of Immigration and Security Minister, expressed shock to the news. She said Lee was still in good shape during his pre-birthday party a few days ago. Chief Executive John Lee expressed deep sorrow and extended his deepest condolences to Lee's family. Lee joined the civil service in 1974 as an immigration officer, rising through the ranks and becoming director of the department in 1998. He was then appointed security chief in 2003, a post he held for 9 years. The city's current security chief, meanwhile, said Hong Kongers are entitled to criticize the government, but only in a manner acceptable under the law. But Chris Tang stopped short of elaborating on the boundaries. During a radio interview this morning, Security Chief Chris Tang insisted Hong Kong people are free to criticize the government. But he warned of the fine line between constructive criticism and inciting hatred in society, the latter of which is a breach of the law. Tang was referring to the recent arrest of two civil servants accused of publishing seditious content through a Facebook page they managed. The page, Civil Secrets, allowed civil servants to vent their anger in their jobs anonymously. It had more than 100,000 followers before it was shut down last week. But similar sites have since come online, with some of the managers said to be overseas. Asked how people can tell if their comments are deemed as acceptable criticism or having ill intention, Tang said it was up to the court to decide. The security chief again took the chance to condemn the Taiwan visit by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, calling it an example of external forces meddling with China's affairs. The former police commissioner emphasized the need for Hong Kong people to remain alert and guard against the threats posed by foreign powers. The government will do its part by stepping up national security education, he added. Hong Kong has registered another 4,979 COVID cases, 215 of which were imported. 22 were Amber Health code holders who have completed quarantine and subsequently tested positive at a community testing center. There were also 3 more COVID-related deaths. One of them is a triple-jabbed 89-year-old man who passed out after visiting a community testing center on Thursday. He was declared dead on arrival at hospital, while his wife also tested positive. Meanwhile, a 5-year-old girl remains in critical condition after contracting COVID. Her older sister, who is double-jabbed, also tested positive but is in stable condition with mild symptoms. Total hospital admissions have climbed to 1,690. More than 14,000 tourists caught in a snap lockdown on Hainan Island have returned home, but many more remained stranded amid a worsening COVID outbreak. Meanwhile, residents in Shanghai are disgruntled over daily PCR tests for children in the coming school year. Chloe Fang tells us more.
School children in Shanghai are finally returning to the campus. Local authorities announced that all primary, middle, and high schools, along with kindergartens and nurseries, will reopen next month for the new academic year. Face-to-face classes have been suspended since March, when a massive COVID outbreak triggered a 2-month lockdown of the financial hub. But there's a catch. All teachers and students must receive daily PCR tests at the school, as China sticks to a zero-COVID strategy. That irritated many parents, with some complaining on social media that it will be too much for children to bear. Others also argue that the long queues will only heighten cross-infection risk. Meanwhile, more than 14,000 tourists stranded in Hainan province have returned to home after completing 7 days of quarantine. But another about 65,000 people remain in the travel hotspot, either waiting for approval to leave the island or trying to secure a flight ticket. Help could be on the way. Authorities said that domestic flights at Sanya Airport will resume tomorrow, and those who meet certain requirements will be allowed to fly home. Total COVID cases in the province have exceeded 7,700 in less than 2 weeks. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
Overseas, British-American novelist Salman Rushdie has been taken off the ventilator and able to speak again, a day after he was stabbed at least 10 times. The attacker meanwhile pleaded not guilty to attempted murder. Raymond Yeung reports.
Showing few emotions, Hadi Matar wore handcuffs and shackles as he appeared at a New York County courthouse for his arraignment. The 24-year-old, who had no criminal record, pleaded not guilty to charges of attempted murder and assault. Prosecutors alleged that Matar's attack was premeditated and targeted, having traveled to the scene from his New Jersey home by bus and purchasing a ticket for the event days ago. He has been remanded without bail. Matar allegedly rushed the stage at the Chautauqua Institution and stabbed Salman Rushdie at least 10 times as he was just beginning a lecture on freedom of expression. The 75-year-old novelist may lose an eye, but was now off the ventilator and able to talk again. Rushdie has been facing death threats since 1989, months after publishing his novel The Satanic Verses, which some Muslims see as blasphemous. US President Joe Biden expressed shock at the vicious attack and praised Rushdie for standing up to essential, universal ideals. The global outpouring of grief was a sharp contrast to the sense of justice shared by many Iranians. This man in Tehran said Rushdie has finally paid for what he did, while another described the news as pleasing. Raymond Yang, HKIBC.
In a rare scene since the Taliban returned to power last year, dozens of Afghan women took to the streets to demand gender equality. The female protesters, some of whom didn't cover their faces as required, shouted slogans demanding the right to work and attend schools in capital Kabul. Security forces responded by beating back protesters and journalists and firing into the air. Some protesters were also detained. Apart from its treatment of women, the hardline Taliban government has also been criticized for the free-falling economy since it took over the country from the United States a year ago.
We are now 1 year down the line from the Taliban takeover, and we're witnessing incredibly high levels of poverty in the country. This is due to the economic collapse of the country, which is well documented. We're seeing people with their salaries reduced, with their income reduced, taking on greater debt, using coping strategies which include early marriage for girls, child labor. It's an extreme situation.
On to the weather now. Staying fine and very hot tomorrow, with temperatures between 27 and 33 degrees. An area of low pressure could bring showers and thunderstorms midweek. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Sunday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Joanna Ho. Thanks for watching. Good night.